Hey everybody, it's Memento Mori again. I'm here to talk about something that's related to my last video. I'm going to be channeling the Varg and telling y'all to stop watching porn. Not necessarily for the same reasons he'd tell you, because he's a pagan. I mean, don't get me wrong. I got respect for what he does. I mean, he has a good life, it seems, as far as with the homestead and everything and his family, and I envy it, to a certain extent. But he's not a Christian, so let's not pretend that he's going to be saying that we shouldn't be watching it for spiritual reasons. I mean, he might call them spiritual reasons, but we both know that this is not it's not the same sort of spirituality we're talking about as Catholics. The main reason I'm here talking about this one is because for my last video, I'm on the Mind Geek thing, I'm preemptively making this one because I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who are calling me a prude, a faggot, whatever you want to say. They're out there calling me all sorts of names, telling me that there's nothing wrong with it, and that for whatever reason I should shut my mouth. They're going to tell you it's not a sin. They're going to tell you it's fine for you, it's natural. Don't listen to them. They're retarded. I mean, there's no other word for it. I'm not going to be nice about it. I don't care. They're simply retarded. You can already see there's studies out there. Just Google it. I'm not going to spoon feed you. I could take pictures and put them up here or whatever, but this is just going to be a quick one, so I'm not. Just Google effects of pornography on teens, and I'm sure you can count the studies. There's about 50 of them. And in each one of them, they list some problems that are here and there, but the biggest problem is, what I think is the biggest problem at least, is not that, we're finding out that beauty standards are being distorted, that kids are actually becoming physically addicted to the serotonin levels that, get released into their brain when they watch this stuff. They get the same fix that a person smoking or an alcoholic gets when they take a drink. That's not the biggest problem to me. I mean, yeah, it's a huge problem. It's bad, and it's disgusting. But the biggest fucking problem is that there's no actual control group to compare these people to. These teens, they couldn't find a control group big enough and diverse enough, because any control group they tried to build to compare their test sample to, most of them watched porn. You can't find teenagers that have never been exposed to this stuff, and not just on the internet, TV. I mean, commercials themselves are smut these days. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. If you've seen a cologne ad, I mean, it's basically a dude, probably some shirtless dude around a bunch of women. I mean, and they're all acting all sensual and stuff. I mean, I've been exposed to it since they've been born. I mean, you can't find a control group that hasn't been exposed to some sort of external sexuality that's been imposed upon them by somebody else, or what somebody else thinks of sexuality has been put in their mind. I mean, that's the biggest problem with pornography, in my opinion. I mean, one, it's a sin, surely. I mean, that's a huge problem, but it's more sinister than that. What happens with pornography is not necessarily that you're engaging in your base desires and you're just being an animal and trying to find material for the spank bank. The worst part about it is that what you're doing is you're accepting somebody else's idea, their interpretation of what the sexual act should be. So the sexual act should be something between a married man and a woman, and that's a fact. That's what it is. Any use of the sexual power outside of marriage is a mortal sin. And what's happening with a lot of this pornography stuff is that they're obviously not accepting that sex is a sacred act within the marital union. They're not accepting that at all, and that's a huge problem, because what they're doing is they're showing people, and kids really, because most kids are watching porn these days, they're showing kids that this is okay. They're showing that our interpretation of what sex can be is okay. This is perfectly fine for you to engage in. It's perfectly fine for you to entertain. And they're not getting the truth of what the sexual act should be from their parents, because obviously that parents don't need to teach their kids anything because they learn it all in public school because we have sex ed classes. And they're being told in sex ed classes that it's okay to do this, to watch pornography and masturbate, which it's not. Ask your priest, not your teacher, because odds are, if kids are listening to this, which you shouldn't be, because it's mature content, hey kid, ask your priest, not your teacher. Your teacher doesn't know anything, unless she's a nun, in which case you might know something, but still ask your priest. But the biggest point here that we need to take into account is that the perception of sexuality has been distorted by the media. It's been distorted by pornography. It's been distorted by parents who divorce and then remarry. At every angle, the modern world seems to want to change the idea of what sex can be to the idea that there are sexualities, that there are multiple types of sexuality. There are homosexuals, there are heterosexuals, there are transsexuals. But we obviously should know that this is a lie. There is only one sexuality, and that's human sexuality. Everything else is it's a perversion of the natural order. You can have sodomy, you can have God knows what else. I'm sure there's names for these things. I might not know them, but that's what they are. They're sins. They're not different. They're not queer. They're not alternative lifestyles. They're sins. The acts themselves are sins, and the people who perpetuate them, perform them, and are unapologetically proud of them are sinners. There's no other way to put it. And sugarcoating it by saying homosexual or pansexual, whatever you want to call it, whatever Tumblr-esque word you want to throw in there, it doesn't matter because it's perversion. It's perversion and it's sin. And I'm not sitting here. I'm not going to be the sex police. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what you can and can't do in bed. But I'm going to tell you that you shouldn't do it with the person who has the same parts as you. Your parts are designed to fit into something else, and when you don't use them in a certain way, it's a sin. That's all I can say. I'm not going to be some sort of sex police with you. I'm not going to be that creepy guy. But I do know that what we're experiencing today is something that it's probably unprecedented. I always hate saying that because usually the human condition doesn't change. We don't really change too much. As far as like what the actors think or do, what changes is the set. And what I mean by that is porn's existed for forever. They found cave paintings of weird cave women with their tops off. It's how it goes. There's Renaissance paintings, sculptures. Ancient Rome was filled with it. The Hindus, they have entire temples where, in India, that are covered in breasts and naked women. It's not something new. Porn's not something new. It's probably innate to the human condition. I don't want to go that far, but it's probably there. Probably has something to do with natural inclination towards sin. Some kind of concupiscence or something. But it's always been there. The difference now is that what we have to ask ourselves now is who controls the porn. What's that porn presenting? And then who does that porn get presented to? And those are the big three. And you don't have to be a traditionalist to be worried about this sort of stuff. Anybody who's worried about society in general in the future should be worried about this. Because, like I said in the Mind Geek video, this company has control of what you're seeing and what you interpret as sexuality if you're a child. Because most children are getting on the internet and watching porn. And even if they're not, adults are doing it too, and it's distorting them as well. Maybe not as much, but it does. And you have to understand that some company is controlling the narrative of what sex can and should be. And that's scary. That's terrifying. It's no longer some family thing where the dad sits down with the son and says, "Hey son, this is how babies are made." There's no awkward conversations anymore. Maybe there are, but they're not. They're definitely not held in such esteem. They can't be, because if you tell your kid this is how sex happens, and he's already seen it 20 times, with some sort of sick fetish video on some porn site, he's not going to care. He's going to be like, well, I've seen it already. I already know. And even if he does care, even if the dad does a good job of telling him what sex is all about, why it's there, why God made it, what it does, it's not going to matter. I mean, that kid's already been, his innocence is lost before that. I mean, he's never going to forget those images that are in his mind. I mean, it can't be. And then I'm sure that's part of a cross you have to carry if you realize that's bad. And, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that they might have watched it before, and they've turned their ways, and they've turned a new leaf over in their lives, and they've done better. I mean, but those images are always going to be there. And I mean, I guess in times like that, you have to pray for a chaste mind or something. But I mean, you just gotta deal with it somehow, because the porn you've watched, the porn kids are watching, the porn everybody's watching, is designed, I'm convinced, is designed to undermine traditional family values, to undermine the traditional family unit, and to laugh in the face of God and what His original intention for sexuality was. There's no other way to put it. And to the people that make this sort of stuff, preying on young girls who are poor and giving them $100 to do a sex scene and film it and throw it on the internet, I mean, I pray for their souls. There's going to be hell to pay, literally. And I hope they quit. I hope they stop, and I hope they repent. But I'm sure they won't. The money's too good, and I'm sure that the thrill's good. And I mean, they're never going to change, as far as I'm concerned. And there's only one thing to do about it, and it's to stop watching porn.